As the autumn sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, Linda was frying eggs in a pan. The scent of maple syrup lingered in the air as toast popped up from the toaster. Thomas entered the kitchen adjusting his tie, immediately reaching for his coffee. "Dad, don't forget about baseball this Saturday, you promised." Joshua, who had just changed into his school uniform, looked up at his father while munching on toast. His red backpack was already strapped to his shoulders. "Of course, I remember. I've already got the tickets." Thomas gently patted his son's head but quickly turned his attention to his smartphone screen. As an investment bank manager working in Manhattan's financial district, he had to monitor trading prices from early morning. "Oh dear, your tie is crooked." Linda quickly fixed his tie, and Thomas smiled sheepishly. After 7 years of marriage, these simple daily exchanges still filled her heart with love. "Well, I'm off." Thomas hurried out the door. It was about an hour's drive to Manhattan with its towering skyscrapers. In the afternoon, Linda was showing a luxury home to potential buyers. Working as a real estate agent in Westchester, a New York suburb, she was maintaining strong sales performance this month. The white mansion standing along tree-lined streets beginning to show fall colors was exactly the kind of property she excelled at selling. "At this rate, you might win top sales award again this month," a colleague teased. Linda responded with a modest smile, but inside she felt confident. The connections she had built through volunteering at Sunday school were paying off in her work. Meanwhile, Joshua was being praised by his teacher for getting a perfect score on his math test. As expected of young Morrison, the teacher said, making him bashfully look down as his classmates smiled. During art time, he drew a picture of his family going to watch baseball. His father's promised outing brought a smile to his face that spread across the entire paper. He took extra care drawing himself sitting next to his father in the stadium under the blue sky. Late that night, Linda's phone rang. The digital clock showed 2 a.m. "Mrs. Morrison, your husband has been in an accident." Linda jumped out of bed at the sudden call and rushed to the hospital with a sleepy Joshua. The nighttime highway was eerily quiet, with streetlights dotting the way. At Westchester Medical Center's emergency room, a doctor with a grave expression awaited them. In the hallway filled with the smell of disinfectant, Linda held her breath waiting for the diagnosis. "His life isn't in immediate danger, but we expect he'll remain in a coma for some time. It's being treated as a single-vehicle accident," the police officer added. Based on the scene, drowsy driving seemed the likely cause. As Linda gazed at her husband's face, she wondered silently. Though he often worked late, he shouldn't have been driving on suburban roads at such an hour. "Why were you on that road so late at night?" Only the sound of the ventilator echoed in the silent hospital room. Joshua held his father's large hand in his small one. A week after the accident, Joshua paused while getting ready for school. He stared out the window, halfway through buttoning his uniform. The trees in the yard were beginning to change color, dropping leaves one by one. "Can I stay home from school today? I want to stay in Dad's room." He had been repeating this request for several days now. Linda placed her hand on her son's cheek and gently reasoned with him. His slightly pale complexion worried her. Dark circles were visible under his eyes. "Dad would be happy to know you're working hard at school." Joshua wouldn't touch his breakfast pancakes. His decreased appetite was becoming concerning. He seemed to have lost some weight recently. Still, his eyes would light up when it was time to visit the hospital. That afternoon, the school called. Linda was in the middle of showing a luxury apartment, but when she noticed the school's number, she immediately stepped away. Outside the window, the autumn sun reflected blindingly off the high-rise buildings. He's been spacing out during class lately, and we're worried. During art time, he only uses black colors now. He must be concerned about his father. Deep concern seeped through the teacher's voice. She mentioned he wasn't playing as actively with his classmates anymore. He often stayed seated at his desk alone during breaks. During breaks, he just stares out the window. Even when we call to him, he just startles and turns around. Yesterday he barely touched his lunch. After school, Joshua was doing homework in the hospital room. He had set up a small folding desk beside his father's bed and was working on math problems. Occasionally, he would look over at his father and read him picture books. He looked like a little angel watching over his father's condition. "Dad, can you hear me?" Today's story is The Wolf and the Seven Young Goats. It's your favorite, right? Look, this is where Mother Goat comes home. The nurses were touched by Joshua's behavior. Linda's work was starting to be affected. She couldn't concentrate during negotiations, distracted by potential calls from the hospital. During property viewings, she kept checking her smartphone. She even forgot to sign important contracts, having to apologize to clients. Fortunately, her supervisor was understanding and allowed her to switch to reduced hours. Taking care of family is part of our company's philosophy. Given your track record, Mrs. Morrison, this kind of accommodation is only natural. The HR director immediately approved Linda's request. There was a general atmosphere of mutual support throughout the company. One night, Linda noticed Joshua's room was empty. Dolls were arranged on the bed to make it look like someone was sleeping. A photo of him with his father sat by the pillow. Rushing to the hospital room, she found her son sitting beside his father's bed, rubbing his sleepy eyes. In the dim lighting of the hospital room, his small back looked strangely dependable. The sound of dripping fluid echoed in the quiet space. "I have to protect Dad." That whisper made Linda anxious. When she consulted a psychologist the next day, the diagnosis was possible trauma. The shock of the accident might have deeply wounded his young heart. Due to the accident, he may be harboring strong anxiety about losing his father. However, the counselor paused, choosing their words carefully. Sunlight streaming through the window of the warm reception room wavered. "I sense there might be other factors at play. The behavior seems different from typical separation anxiety. It's almost as if he's trying to protect his father from something." After that, Linda began observing Joshua's behavior more carefully. He would head straight to the hospital after school and try to stay by his father's side until late at night. Sometimes he would fall asleep in the hallway. "Why don't you want to leave Dad's side? Did something happen?" No matter how many times she asked, Joshua would just fall silent. His downcast eyes seemed to harbor some dark shadow. He became especially anxious at night, insisting, "I need to go to Dad's room," and refusing to listen. He appeared to be carrying some important mission. Nurses reported that he often comes to check the room in the middle of the night. Security camera footage showed a small figure quietly walking the nighttime corridors. He would stop in front of the nurses' station, peering inside. Sometimes he would hide when he heard approaching footsteps, almost as if he was on guard against something. Something is clearly wrong with him. Linda made up her mind. Tonight, she would check the nighttime hospital room. She planned to put her son to bed early and secretly return to the hospital. The cause of her son's strange behavior had to be there. Linda crept down the hospital corridor in the dead of night. Medical equipment beeped regularly in the distance, but otherwise all was quiet. The old hallway floor eerily echoed her footsteps. She had felt something strange in the air since returning to the hospital after putting her son to bed early. There had to be a reason for Joshua's changes. Tonight was the time to solve this mystery. If my intuition is right, Linda murmured to herself as she continued down the dark corridor. On the ceiling of the passageway leading to the west wing, fluorescent lights flickered intermittently. Past the nurse's station, a young nurse was organizing documents. She looked tired in her night shift uniform. Linda returned her slight nod and headed toward the west wing where her husband's room was located. The hallway, smelling of disinfectant, was shrouded in darkness. Outside the windows, autumn trees swayed in the wind, casting eerie patterns of shadows on the hallway walls. Occasionally, distant ambulance sirens would create tension throughout the hospital. Just checking on Thomas. The nurse nodded understandingly at Linda's words. While visiting hours were over, the hospital staff who knew the situation turned a blind eye. Over these weeks, a quiet trust had developed between them and the staff. "Mrs. Morrison, how is your son doing lately?" the nurse asked with concern. Linda returned a smile and deflected with vague words. Right now, she couldn't confide her true worries to anyone. Linda stopped in front of the hospital room. A pale blue light leaked through the door crack. Feeling her heartbeat quicken, she peered inside. The sound of dripping fluid marked time in the silence. That's when it happened. A young woman in a suit approached her husband's perfect makeup and a luxury brand suit. Something like a syringe in her hand. Linda's spine froze. The woman's hand reached for the tube. Her movements showed signs of familiarity. As if she had done this many times before. At that moment, a small shadow appeared from nowhere. A small figure in pajamas jumped out from behind a chair in the corner of the room. "Stop! Don't try to kill him." It was Joshua's voice. When had he gotten into the room? The woman turned in surprise, dropping the syringe. It hit the floor with an ominous sound. The face illuminated by the hallway light was familiar. Thomas's subordinate, Carol Baker. "You." Linda's voice trembled. Carol showed a moment of confusion before putting on a cold smile. Her luxury brand suit gleamed eerily in the nighttime hospital room. Her perfectly styled hair was now slightly disheveled. "You're supposed to be a good boy, aren't you? If you stay quiet, your mother will be safe." Those words made Joshua's small body tremble. Still, he wouldn't move from in front of his father's bed. He stood his ground with a desperate expression, small fists clenched. This child, has ruined my perfect plan." Carol's voice dripped with hatred. Her hand, slightly trembling, reached for something in her luxury brand bag. "Mama!" Joshua cried out upon noticing Linda's presence. He ran to her with tears streaming down his face. Behind him, Carol hurried toward the exit. The sound of her heels echoed in the hallway. Linda immediately called the police. Her fingers trembled as she pressed the smartphone buttons. Hospital staff gathered around. Security cameras had captured everything from the moment Carol entered the room. The syringe was found to contain a lethal dose of drugs. Laboratory analysis would reveal the brutality of her plan. Joshua clung to his mother and began speaking in a trembling voice. His small hands gripped Linda's blouse tightly. "That person made Dad have the accident. I saw it. Then she came every night, trying to do something to Dad, so I kept watch. But I couldn't tell anyone, because Mama would be in danger." Linda held her son tightly. His small body was still trembling. His young shoulders had carried too heavy a burden. "You did so well. Everything's all right now." Outside the window, the autumn night wind rustled through the hospital trees. Red leaves danced in the moonlight as they fell silently. The sound of dripping fluid echoed in the quiet nighttime hospital room. At his father's bedside, the heart monitor continued its steady rhythm. Soon the police arrived, and Carol was arrested. In the interrogation room, she would confess everything. Her ambitions of a perfect life in a luxury apartment came to an end there. Linda waited for dawn with her arm around her son's shoulders. Through the hospital room window, they could see the sky gradually brightening. There was a sense that this new day would finally bring hope. As the sun rose, the attending physician arrived with a surprised expression. The hem of his white coat fluttered with his hurried footsteps down the early morning corridor. "Ma'am, your husband's consciousness level is improving." Mother and son shed tears of joy at the news. The morning sun streaming through the hospital room window announced the start of a new day. In the vase by Thomas's bed were autumn wildflowers that Joshua had picked during each visit. The flowers gleamed gently in the morning light. "Dad, it's okay now. I protected you." Joshua's small hand gently gripped his father's large one. In the police station interrogation room, Carol sat with her hands folded on the table and began speaking quietly. "My relationship with Thomas began 3 months ago." In a matter-of-fact voice, she recounted the past. The investment bank office on the top floor of a skyscraper. Their relationship gradually grew closer during nights of overtime work. "I wanted everything he had." The investigator took notes methodically. Outside the window, dawn was approaching. "Then I became pregnant." The room's atmosphere froze at that confession. Carol drank some water with trembling hands and continued. "When I told him, he immediately ended things. Said he would never destroy his family." The circumstances of the accident day also became clear. On the highway from Manhattan to the suburbs, Carol had been driving. A heated argument with Thomas in the passenger seat led to her losing control of the car. "I panicked, and just ran away. But that was only the beginning. If Thomas regained consciousness in the hospital, everything would come to light. Carol's position, reputation, everything would be lost." So I needed to silence him. Drugging the four, tampering with the oxygen mask. The details of multiple attempted murders were meticulously revealed. But that child. Carol's expression twisted. Joshua's presence had disrupted what should have been a perfect plan. In another room, Joshua began giving his testimony beside his mother. A police officer specializing in child psychology asked gentle questions. I first saw it the day after the accident. Joshua recalled in a small voice. I went to see Dad after class finished. And then, through the crack in the hospital room door, he witnessed an unfamiliar woman. A hand trying to inject something into his father's fore. When he almost cried out in surprise, his eyes met Carol's. Keep quiet. If your father wakes up, I'll be arrested. And if that happens, your mother might have an accident too. That threat froze his young heart with fear. But he had to protect his father. From the moment he made that decision, Joshua's secret vigil began. I went to Dad's room every night. I knew when she was likely to come. Days spent hiding in corners of the hospital room, waiting unnoticed by nurses. Fighting sleep many times to continue protecting his father. Security camera footage backed up his testimony. A small shadow walking the nighttime corridors. Repeatedly reporting to the nurses' station. There was the figure of a 6-year-old boy desperately trying to prevent Carol's repeated murder attempts. You did very well. When the investigator spoke gently, Joshua clung to his mother. No one would threaten him anymore. At the hospital, Thomas's condition was changing. As his consciousness gradually returned, memories of the accident became clearer. With Carol. As Thomas struggled with the words, Linda quietly nodded. Everything had been revealed by the police investigation. You don't need to say anything now. However, something had been irreparably broken in her heart. 7 years of marriage. The trust they had built together. Everything crumbled in an instant. The following week, Carol's initial hearing was held. Charges of assault, attempted murder, and intimidation. The prosecution sought a severe sentence. In court, Carol gave her final statement. Gone were the luxury brand suit and perfect makeup. I was possessed by madness in the name of love. At those words, Linda closed her eyes in the gallery. Love. That was the word of the woman who had tried to take everything from her. According to the doctors, Thomas's recovery would take time. It would be more than 6 months before he could return to work after rehabilitation. However, that time would not be enough to restore the family bonds. We can't go back. Linda's decision was firm. Divorce proceedings began, with Linda receiving custody. Child support arrangements proceeded matter-of-factly. Thomas requested a transfer to the West Coast after his recovery. He chose a new life, as if running from everything. Linda and Joshua began a new life while continuing counseling. Their suburban new home was smaller than before but filled with warm light. Mom, I'm not scared anymore. Back at school, Joshua gradually regained his smile. His figure walking the hallway with his teacher no longer harbored that dark shadow. Carol received a 15-year prison sentence. In prison, she gradually became mentally unstable. No family visited her, and she suffered a miscarriage. Everything was lost along with her ambitions. 1 year after the incident, Linda visited her former neighborhood for a property viewing. It was fall again, the same crisp autumn weather as when the incident occurred. By chance, she passed the hospital. The place where a small shadow had desperately protected his father. Now it stood quietly as a place where new life awaited birth. "Mom, do you remember that time?" Joshua suddenly asked from the passenger seat. "I wanted to protect you. That's why I couldn't tell anyone." Linda gripped the steering wheel tighter. "You protected all of us." A flock of birds flew across the twilight sky. A new season was surely approaching. 3 years had passed since the incident. In their small house in the Westchester suburbs, Joshua, now taller, practiced baseball in the yard. "Joshua, snack time." At Linda's call, her 9-year-old son came running. His suntanned cheeks glowed with health. On the table sat freshly baked apple pie, a new recipe learned at Sunday school. Though their house was smaller than before, it held all the warmth two people needed. "Mom, I got an award at school today." His eyes sparkled as he announced winning a writing contest. The theme was, "My Pride." Joshua had written about his new life with his mother. Through the kitchen window, the evening sky was visible. The incident from 3 years ago was steadily becoming part of the past. Occasionally, they would see news about Carol in prison. Her former glamour had faded as she spent her days silently in her cell. With no visitors, her ambitions had completely crumbled. At her final trial, Carol had calmly admitted her guilt. "I've lost everything. But it's my own doing. I accept this punishment." The 15-year sentence was confirmed, marking the end of her life as she knew it. The luxury apartment lifestyle and career woman ambitions were all in the past. The miscarriage had pushed her further into mental decline. She frequently visited the prison infirmary and spent sleepless nights. Meanwhile, Thomas had started a new life on the West Coast. After rehabilitation, he transferred to an investment firm in San Francisco. Occasionally, cards for his son would arrive along with child support payments. "This is from your father." When Linda said those words now, there was no more pain in her voice. Joshua, too, had learned to accept letters from his father naturally. Linda's real estate business remained strong. Drawing from her experience, she specialized in properties for single mothers. Many women in similar situations came to trust her. "I'm so glad I consulted Mrs. Morrison." Hearing such words warmed her heart. It felt good knowing her experience could help others. The church community had become a great support. She continued volunteering at Sunday school and made many friends. Martha, the pastor's wife, was especially attentive to her concerns. "God only gives us trials we can overcome." Those words had saved Linda many times. Joshua's emotional wounds had gradually healed too. Continuing school counseling, he slowly regained his cheerfulness. He joined the baseball team and made new friends. "Play catch with me." On holidays, he eagerly taught his mother how to throw. It was heartening to see him gently coaching clumsy Linda. He had become active in PTA activities too. Where he once worried about Dad not coming to parent meetings, he now proudly declared, "It's fine because Mom will be there." They had naturally developed relationships with their new neighbors. The housewives next door had become barbecue buddies on weekends. Children visited back and forth, filling the air with cheerful laughter. One day while tending the garden, an unfamiliar woman visited. "I'm Carol Baker's sister." Linda tensed for a moment. But there was no hostility in the woman's expression. "I've come to apologize on my sister's behalf." The envelope she offered contained Carol's handwritten apology. Through prison counseling, she had apparently reached her own form of repentance. "I'll accept this," Linda answered quietly. She felt no need to remain imprisoned by hatred anymore. In the evening twilight, walking with Joshua, Linda looked up at the sky. "Hey, Mom." "Yes. We're happy, aren't we?" Those words brought tears to Linda's eyes. True, their current life wasn't luxurious. But maybe this small happiness was what truly mattered all along. The next day, Linda removed her wedding ring that she had worn for years. She bought a new ring as a gift for her son. "This is a token of Mom's promise." "What promise?" "That we'll always be a happy family together." That night, under the moonlight, mother and son shared a long embrace. Time flows, seasons turn. Spring brings cherry blossoms, summer brings cicadas. Fall paints the leaves red, and winter brings snow. Still, the memory of that incident would never completely fade. But now it stood as testimony to their strength. In the warm spring sunshine, Linda headed to show a new property. In the passenger seat, Joshua spread out his homework. "Mom, I've decided on my dream for the future." "What dream?" "I want to be a lawyer. A lawyer who can protect people in trouble." Linda smiled gently at those words. The son who had tried to protect his father with his small body was now aiming to protect society's justice. Their new life was steadily moving forward. Perhaps it wasn't a flashy story. But for the two of them, these were irreplaceable, precious days. Linda gazed at her son's reflection in the rearview mirror. A strong, capable 9-year-old boy. They would continue walking forward together, step by step. Outside the window, spring winds lifted cherry blossom petals into the air, as if announcing the beginning of a new season.